this is Himiko. Himiko is arguably the first person in Japanese history. So before Himiko, in the 3rd century AD, the only histories in Japan are myth, heavily embellished legends, basically. So it's not to say that there isn't history, but it's all hundreds of years after the fact and mythic a lot of the time. So it's basically like emperor followed by emperor followed by emperor, but mostly they're just names, and then people put these mythic stories onto it. Himiko exists outside of the Japanese mythic stories because she's in the Chinese sources. So in the 3rd century AD, the Book of Song, I think it's around 297 AD, records this embassy from the land of Wa, beyond the sea, arriving at the Chinese court, the Chinese Southern Song court, in the middle of the 3rd century AD. And basically they are envoys coming on behalf of a shaman queen called Himiko, who rules over a confederacy of these states in the land called Wa. And a shaman queen. And it's such an evocative image because there's not much. It's just like a few lines, and they come to basically seek legitimization basically from the Chinese, and they succeed. So the Chinese say, all right, yep, you can go back. We'll give you this seal of approval. Basically, you've paid homage to the Chinese emperor, and we've legitimized you as ruler, and you can go back and you can keep the peace on our behalf as a subject people, because the Chinese like to do that. And yeah, they basically, it's just this little snapshot into what was going on in Japan at that time. And Japan during that time is it's in the early Kofun period. And basically Kofuns are these giant tombs, and they're called keyhole tombs. Have you seen these at all?
No, I unfortunately no.
Just briefly show you one. They are ludicrously massive. So it's kind of like a pyramid in a way. A ruler would be buried in one, and the idea is people probably like did rituals on top of them and worshipped at them. Oh, that is the worst picture in the world. Tiny little picture. There we go. So they're these big tombs basically with moats and people buried inside them. And for most of this, that's a moat, yeah. For most of this period, we don't know much about what's going on because there's no history in Japan. The first histories in Japan are written in like 700 AD. This is sort of 300 AD, so hundreds of years before. And Himiko, the story in the Chinese sources, is just a little insight into what was going on in Japan at this time. And it's just so different to everywhere else. I really, really like it. It's really different. And what else can I say? Yeah, Himiko ruled over one state among many. So there's like many Japanese states at this time. She may be a sort of priest queen, let's say. She's like a religious leader. There may have been... say warlords who ruled on her behalf, kind of thing. Maybe she was more spiritually in charge of things, and all around these Kofuns, just to go back to the brief thing that we mentioned in the ending of human sacrifice.
Oh, there were sacrifices here as well, or
yes, there were. Well, it's not very common in the archaeological record, but in the written sources, they're always going on about human sacrifices, and they're saying that the early emperors practiced it, and then there was an emperor who came along and he put an end to the old ways, and instead they would put these clay figures, these Haniwa figures.
Kind of like the Shabti you were saying.
It's kind of like the Shabtis in Egypt, yeah. It's kind of an interesting. Independent parallel. So these Haniwa are super interesting because there are other insights into what was going on in Japan at this time, and some of them depict horseback riding warriors, other ones depict houses, mythological beings, and you can really reconstruct quite a lot of what's going on in Japan through these Haniwa.
That's right. That kind of makes sense. Sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
no,
You were saying?
you carry on. You carry
No,
on.
I just was thinking. You said something about she's a shaman queen, and then they have this human sacrifice. So maybe that kind of ties in with like the mystery that it's just kind of
Yeah,
like witch queen or something like this.
yeah. Could well, yeah, could well be. I think the Chinese sources, I think they basically they suggest that she ruled the people through like coercing them through magic and things. So, yeah, I don't think the Chinese were very impressed with the shamanism aspect of it. But yeah, this is
I know nothing about this. This is really fascinating.
this is a proto samurai basically, because if you look at the armor and you look at the sword and you look at generally what this guy looks like, he kind of looks like a samurai, but it's 1,000 years before the age of the samurai. But this is essentially the very origins of Japanese medieval history. Sort of Japanese medieval history flows from this period, and it's unbroken. So it just sort of just flows on from this period.
Wow.
And yeah. But oh yeah, that was what I was going to say. Himiko's interesting because she doesn't exist in the Japanese sources. She only exists in the Chinese sources. So the Japanese have always struggled to include Himiko. She may be she may be a Japanese empress, basically a consort of an emperor who's then a mother of a future emperor. But that person's got a completely different name. So, yeah, it's this interesting sort of like interplay between the Chinese sources, which are quite rigorous, and it's like this is just one incident in a massive book charting the histories of the time and like very meticulously recorded history, and then the Japanese sort of mythic tales, and it's like how do you actually put those two together? One's from the outside looking in, the other one's from the inside looking out.
What's her name? Her name is Himiko, right?
Himiko.
Himiko. I've never heard of her. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And she might be. I'm just looking at who might she be. She might be.
You're saying she might be like a historical.
She might be. Yeah, she might be Empress Jingu, who is one of the early empresses of Japan, basically considered legendary. But all of the early emperors of Japan are considered legendary. It's not to say they didn't exist, but they're when hundreds and hundreds of years are between.
Like the kings of Rome kind of thing, right? Maybe.
Yeah, it's like the kings of Rome. Yeah, they're recorded hundreds of years later. It's like King Arthur or something else, but maybe not King Arthur. Maybe it's a bit more real than King Arthur. But yeah, it's interesting. And then the royal family of Japan are still kind of supposedly descended from these people, which is nuts. Because it's an unbroken line all the way back from the mythic days of the first millennium BC.
That's fascinating. Yeah, that's like...
And there we go. And it was only 1945 that the Americans were like, no, you can't be a deified monarch anymore. We have to put a stop to this. So yeah,
they put a stop to it. They did.
Yeah.
That's right. 1945.
So it's like it's 3,000 years, or no, it's about 3,000 years or something. But when you get into the deep, murky epochs of Japanese prehistory, it's all really weird because the emperors don't make sense with the archaeology.
Yeah,
so there's that fun.
So yeah, so they're more mythological, kind of. They're
seem to be, yeah, because it's this thing where like each one of them will have a reign of. Someone's just decided like, okay, so and so had a reign of 97 years, so and so had a reign of 78 years, yeah, and it's just somebody writing in the kind of 7th century AD, basically, round about the same time as the Tang Empire that I mentioned earlier. That's when the Japanese start writing things down, inspired by the Chinese.
Reminds me of the. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just like it's interesting because they get to writing history very late comparatively to much of the rest of the world. Yeah,
I was thinking that reminds me of like the Sumerian king list. You have these like legendary kings.
Similar, I think it's similar to that.
Egypt,
yeah.
like the Palermo stone. You have on that. You have a lot of like these kings that, at least their names are different than what the archaeology has. I mean, they have found like early kings of Egypt.
Yeah.
not with the same names that are listed on the
That's the
Palermo
thing,
stone.
yeah. So sometimes there's just
Kinda like
this
this.
random different name, and you're like, how do we even marry
Yeah.
this up with the other sources? Yeah, so that's the interesting thing that goes on in Japan, because
Hmm.
I think more nationalistic historians would like to just throw out the Chinese sources, basically, and just rely on their own. But yeah. Yeah. And you could probably tell that I've been researching Japan and China
Oh,
recently. So
that's. I don't want to blow your cover, but is that a future history time?
it is actually, yeah, no, it is, yeah, yeah. I'm happy to just say it. I'm working on something about Japanese prehistory, basically. So it's all this stuff. It's all Himiko and the early emperors, and yeah, these Kofun tombs.